Plus, Bank of Ghana dragged to the High Court by Bell Star and Starmount. We'll tell you why.
This is Top Story with Evans Mensah.
Top Story is always brought to you by Bond Savings and Loans. Your success, our passion. Gasem, the nation builder. Vodafone, the future is exciting, ready, and nationwide medical health insurance. Your healthcare family. There is intense pressure tonight on both government and the Bank of Ghana to prosecute all complicit managers, directors, and shareholders of the 5 banks dissolved yesterday. Representatives from from other financial institutions and civil society groups have demanded that the Bank of Ghana go beyond simply revoking the licenses of these banks to actually pursuing the decision makers whose actions led to the collapse of the banks. Unibank, Royal, Beige, Sovereign, and Construction banks all ceased to exist yesterday after the central bank determined that bad banking practices had left them insolvent. In fact, in the case of Beige, Construction, and Sovereign banks, the Bank of Ghana found that they obtained their banking licenses under false pretenses through the use of suspicious and non-existent capital. Today, the central bank vowed to hand over their findings to the appropriate state agencies to pursue both civil and criminal action against directors and managers of the affected banks. Chief Executive of Dalex Finance, Ken Thompson, today told my colleague Daniel Dadzi that every single person found culpable must be prosecuted to restore public confidence in the financial sector.
Well, we have said that we will look at what is available to us in our armory, our regulatory armory. We may have administrative powers to declare persons no longer fit and proper to do business in the banking sector. We would, to the extent that we have appointed a receiver, we would expect that they would pursue any recoveries that they can pursue within the court system or any other means that are lawfully allowed. We would also be able to pass on all the findings of our investigation so far to the appropriate state agencies that are mandated to investigate and to prosecute if warranted. So what we know is that there is a lot of wrongdoing on the part of individuals that contributed to the collapse of these companies, and we will not stop at revoking their licenses. We would ensure that we pass on to the appropriate quarters.
And that is Madam Elsie Awaji, who is the Deputy Governor of the Central Bank, speaking to my colleague Daniel Dadzi earlier today. We'll hear more from her about what they plan to do with the findings that they have. And we'll be bringing you what the Attorney General's Department has been saying to us about whether or not they've received anything yet from the Bank of Ghana. Details of that shortly. As we wait to hear far more about the plans right now by the Bank of Ghana to pursue all avenues possible to ensure that it's not just restricted to the withdrawal and revocation of licenses, but some form of legal action is taking. Let's return to the Dalex Finance Chief Executive, Kenneth Thompson, who has been pushing quite strongly for some firm prosecution, punishment handed down to everybody found culpable.
Let us not underestimate how serious this matter is. I mean, 5.6 billion is over 10% of Ghana's budget, of our income. It's over 10% of our budget. We're going to the Chinese cup in hand for 20 billion cedis, if I use 5 to 1 to a dollar. So it's nearly 25% of the money we're desperate for. And unless the people that are culpable are prosecuted, we might as well not have started. We've got to set an example which will be the foundation for the development of this country. We have to do things right. We're setting an example for our children, for institutions. And it has impacts on the governor's own career. It has impacts on the how people perceive us externally. It has people. I mean, it has huge significance. And so for me, I'm in my 40s. I mean, the governor has to prosecute those who are culpable. And also, we've got to remember that when there's a failure, there's no one point. Where were the regulators? Who are their auditors? I mean, they said deposits were understated and loans understated.
Yeah.
I mean, surely, who are the auditors? Who did who went on the reviews? Who were the tax inspectors? I mean, and all these issues have to be dealt with quickly, promptly, decisively, because it affects those of us who are trying to do the right thing. And it's a bad example for the whole country. If people do not save, there's more money to invest. If there's no investment, businesses don't grow. If businesses don't grow, there will be no jobs, and there are no jobs. You know, you can't take money given to you, taxpayers' money, and give to your wife and children. It is wrong. I mean, let's not complicate the matter. Money is given to somebody, taxpayers' money, and he gives it to his wife and children. And it's not Ken Thompson's 10 cedis. We're talking billions. The governor is on 40%. He has to prosecute.
But it's not his job to prosecute. Mr. Awaji has mentioned that
he's got to make sure it's his job. I miss Awaji. He has to put it in a way which is politically palatable. Of course, the government doesn't directly prosecute, but he's got to give information to the agencies that prosecute and make sure that they prosecute.
And you had the Ken Thompson, who's the chief executive of Dealers Finance, Sidney Casely-Hayford with pressure group Occupy Ghana, and a financial analyst as well as the banking expert Dr. Richmond Tuahene. Both go further. They want to see prosecution of Bank of Ghana officials who colluded with these banks.
There are certain players within the banking supervision departments of the Bank of Ghana who need to be examined, and the bank has to do its internal review and clean out all the bad nuts that were there. You cannot issue a fraudulent license unless you collude with the bank of the supervision department of the central bank, and those persons also have to be identified and prosecuted.
People should be prosecuted, and I'm saying, including the people who were in charge of giving the license, because they should have do verification and confirmation of the capital. So if people take deposit from people's bank and come and do capital, and then you are giving them a license, who caused it? It is both the shareholders, the directors, and the regulator.
Well, we have been working our sources both at the Economic and Organized Crimes Office and the Attorney General's Department in a bid to establish if there are any plans to begin a criminal probe, but also follow up on what has happened to the shareholders and directors of Capital and UT banks. Of course, those two banks collapsed in a similar manner last year. My colleague, Joseph Opoku-Gakpo, has that bit. But just before we hear from Joseph, our sources at the Attorney General's Department have told us that they are yet to receive any briefing from the central bank on these 5 banks. And you know already that the central bank made some findings, including, as has been already indicated yesterday, some of the banks obtaining their licenses using false pretenses, but also relying on capital that was non-existent. Now, Attorney General's Department sources there tell us that they are yet to receive these findings from the central bank to trigger any form of criminal investigations that may lead to prosecution. Joseph, these are the 5 banks we're talking about, but they're in the total, in the last 1 year, we've had 7 banks in all go under. And the first 2 happened to be Capital and UT. And we knew that the IOCO had begun some form of criminal investigations. You've been working your sources to get a sense of where they are with that process. What did you learn?
So that has been ongoing for almost a year now. And from what we gather, in fact, to quote our sources, they indicate that the investigation into the role that the directors of those 2 banks played and trying to get them brought to book, those investigations, our sources say, have reached an advanced stage. That's the terminology they used to describe it, and that sometime soon they're refusing to give definite timelines, but that sometime soon the docket on how the findings have been would be forwarded to the Attorney General for advice, and so that if there has to be prosecution or any other action, then those will be taken. But again, our sources are telling us that all the individuals, as far as those two banks are concerned, who have been mentioned for their role in how come the banks went down, have been interviewed by investigators at Yoko over the last 1 year, and now is just putting together their docket and putting finishing touches to that to make it available to the Attorney General's office for the necessary advice.
Joseph, thank you very much. And earlier you heard Elsie Obaji, who is a deputy governor at the central bank, indicate that they will do everything possible to hand over whatever they have to the relevant agencies to conduct their own probes, if they may, for possible civil and criminal action to commence. Well, she gave additional details on what else they are looking into when she spoke to Daniel Dadzie in the morning.
What needs to be followed up through, and we will be judgment.
You said you are passing on these documents of investigations done so far. When is this handing over being done? Who are you handing them over to?
Well, that's still work that's ongoing. Like I said, we've just appointed a receiver yesterday in the person of Mr. Nia Manodoju. We're going to be working with them so that they can pursue all the civil options that are civil law options available to them, going to court and all of that. They would also take steps to report to the appropriate quarters, guided by the findings of all the reports we have so far, so that the appropriate agencies take up these matters. When we're going to do that, as soon as possible.
But the two can happen concurrently, no?
Yes. So I'm not saying that they're going to be done sequentially. I said all of these things are going to happen, and what those state agencies do, that will be up to their own judgment. But we will hand over what we have to them.
That's what I want to know, as in when that will be done. Since you say that we can continue.
Maybe I should go now and do that. So we're going to do it. We're going to do it. Trust me. And in the case of UT and Capital, we did it. We handed over to IOCO and other state agencies. They have pursued investigations. They have pursued interviews and many other things in the pipeline and things they've done already. We're going to.
So these persons will be prosecuted?
I don't know. We don't prosecute, and we don't make the judgment as to whether anyone should be prosecuted. All we do is to say these matters are matters that we can have the receiver go to court to recover on. These other matters seem to be such that they need to be looked into with a view to establishing whether there's a case for taking any criminal action. And we don't make the judgment on that.
Will they be banned from banking again?
Would who be banned from banking again?
The persons who have been named in this report, the shareholders and the directors who took money. Under
our administrative remit, we can come to the judgment that certain persons are no longer fit and proper to conduct business in the industry. And if it comes to that, we will do it. And this is all part of measures. We have taken these first measures yesterday. It was important we did that. We're ensuring that there's a smooth transition to the new bank, Consolidated Bank Ghana, and that all depositors have full access to their monies and continue their normal banking business with this new bank. And then we're going to be looking at what do we do with all these people. But you have my word on that. We are going to do the best we can to ensure that we do what we can do within our administrative powers, and then whatever else is beyond us, we pass them on to those quarters.
At what points do we know if these persons who took out monies without proper documentations, like you said, people's salaries and what have you, at what points do we know if they are not fit and proper to...
Fit and proper. We will make that public, as we always do. We will publish a notice when we get to that point.
So, in the case of the 5 banks that were dissolved yesterday, who are these directors who may be affected if indeed the Bank of Ghana decides to hand over its findings to the appropriate agencies to begin criminal and civil investigations that may lead to prosecution? Well, my colleague Raymond Akwa has details of that. Raymond, let's start with Unibank.
Yeah. We do know that as of the time Unibank was actually converted into what the current state collapsed, it was under the control of the KPMG. But prior to that time, it was actually having the following as the members of the board: Kwabena Dufour II, Eko Nyakodazi Dennis, Osuansa Awere, and Elsie Danswa Tre Florence Adai Ohine was also on the board. Opoku Jemfi Boatin was also on the board, and there's also Felix Nyako Pon. These were primarily the members of the board. This was prior to the official administrator taking over. Appointed to take over the bank in this case, yeah.
Let's talk about Beige Bank.
Yes, Beige had Kofi Otutu Adulabi as the board chairman, and you know that he has been an advisor to the governor of the Bank of Ghana in 2011, has worked at the Bank of Ghana even in times past. And
in 2011, he was at the Bank of
advisor
Ghana.
to the Bank of Ghana then. Now, Mike Nyinaku is the CEO of Beige Bank.
Is he also the founder of it?
Yes. And Richard Adupoku is a member. Theophilus Adumako, Jao Ofuria J. Wilson, Kortete, Dr. Elsie Kaufman. That name should sound very familiar to you.
Yeah, of course.
Yes,
it does.
Yes. And George Appa Kwabin is also a member of the Unibank board.
Royal Bank.
Yes, Royal Bank has Professor Bill Buena Pupulampu. He's taught at the University of Ghana before
Professor
he was.
Yes. Very familiar name.
Yes,
used to be one of the resource persons.
Yes, finance expert and economics too. And Osei Asafo J, he's the MD. Victoria M. Fahad Castle is actually part of the board of Royal Bank. Samuel K. Penten, Kweku Otimpon, Aaron Kwame Achu, Alhaji Abdul Fattah Adamu, and Bartholomew Kwame Ahajitu. The rest are Alhaji Abdul Aziz Adamu Idrisu, Alhaji Abdul Zakor Adamu, and also Alhaji Abdul Mumuni Adamu. These are the rest of the members of the Royal Bank.
Royal Bank.
Yes.
Now, Construction Bank, because that's a bank that is barely a year old.
Yes. Stephen Poggi is the CEO and MD. You know Stephen Poggi, formerly of the MD of ADB, right?
Yes.
Yes. But the chairman of the board is Dr. Asare Kufu, and also Major General Kwame Opoku Dusei. Richard Diao Ado, he's a lawyer, he's also on that particular board. And Sally Amwa, Vivian Lamte, Kwesi Edu Mante is the board secretary of Construction Bank.
Now, the final one is the Sovereign
Bank is chaired by Dr. Kwame Echampon Che, and the MD is Johan Reda, and he's the MD. And of course, you know he's formerly Charter One Bank in South Sudan and worked with Barclays in South Africa too. Dr. Teteneti is a member of the board. Abdullahi Abukar is a member too, and John Okwesi Arthur Afote Odaite Fio is also a member of the board of Sovereign Bank, and Abdul Samed Jusu. He was, if you do know, a deputy managing director of ADB some time ago.
Okay.
So he's also a member of the board of Sovereign Bank.
Now, what we've learned today from the Yoko is that in the case of Capital and UT, all the directors have already been questioned, interrogated in the last year, and the process is complete. A report is going to be forwarded to the Attorney General's Department shortly for it to consider what to do with it. But Raymond, there is a related suit that has just been filed, and the Bank of Ghana and another institution has been dragged to the High Court. What is the suit about?
So, at the Commercial Division of the High Court, Best Star Capital Limited and Starmont Development Limited.
Who are these?
Best Star and Starmont, they bought shares in ADB. You recall that some time ago, and ADB's IPO was big issue because the workers opposed it and it became a big fight. Stephen Poggi, who is a construction bank, was the MD then, but they finally proceeded with the IPO after he left office. Now, Bestar bought 24%, and the other group in Starmont Development Limited also bought 11%. Altogether, they bought 35% of the shares of ADB. You do recall that in the course of the year, after these shares were purportedly transferred to Unibank, and Unibank had issued a statement that they were taking over ADB. That particular story that came out, and Kwabena Dufour Jr. confirmed that on this particular network.
True.
Yes. Then the Bank of Ghana came to say that nothing of that sort has happened. Then the Bank of Ghana, weeks later, came out with a statement annulling the shares that Belstar and Starmont Development Limited had in ADB.
And this happened a couple of weeks ago.
Yes.
Correct.
So that is why the people are going to court. So they believe that the decision was not in the right place.
They were taken 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
To annul their shares.
Very good.
In ADB.
They are demanding specific claims in this case. They are saying that there should be an order of injunction which is restraining both the Bank of Ghana and also the central depositories, security depositories, from unlawful relations with the business of the plaintiff, which is in this case Starmount and Belstar.
Yeah.
And also, they also want an order of perpetual injunction restraining them from an unlawful interference with the contractual relations they have with the banks and also the central depositories institution. They also want an order of injunction restraining the central depositories institution from freezing the shares of the plaintiffs in ADB, which is what the Bank of Ghana said they are not anyway. And they proceeded by saying that another order is required to make sure that any conspiracy that the two institutions they are suing may come together.
Bank of Ghana and the
central depositories actually come together to do against the Belstar and Starmount, ought to be fought by the court in this case. They are also demanding damages, including punitive damages, for their unlawful interference in the business of the plaintiffs in this matter. They want a declaration that this order that sought to freeze the shares in ADB, that particular order be annulled, and that it is not in tune with the proper statutes of the nation, and that it is unfair to them, and that it was done based on frivolous means and not on what's supposed to be lawful anyway. So these are what they are demanding of the court. In fact, they also want that the directors appointed by plaintiffs to immediately cease to be directors of ADB.
Because what? The Bank of Ghana has already appointed directors?
Yes, but I'm not proud to that, because Belstar and Starmount actually became like big shareholders in ADB. They also had influence in the directors.
Of course.
So the people they appointed, they were replaced. When all of these things happen, they are insisting that those people should cease operating, and the people that they put there should continue operating at ADB.
Because they are the majority shareholders.
Very good in this particular case. So they should continue operating at ADB as the people who have majority shares in this case. So these are the reliefs they are demanding.
Thank you very much, Raymond. I'm grateful that you joined us with those details. By the way, today was the first time the newly constituted the Consolidated Bank of Ghana Limited started its operations. In fact, the Consolidated Bank Ghana Limited is the singular bank that how do I put it? It sort of took over all the 5 banks in essence. When they were dissolved, all their assets, liabilities had been transferred to this new bank, and so this new bank opened its doors for the very first time to customers of these 5 banks, but not as, say, Unibank or Royal Bank, but as a Consolidated Bank Ghana Limited. And of course, my colleagues had been to these banks just to gauge what happened when the bank opened its doors. Just been joined by Charles and Sabute. So let me start with you. Which of these banks did you go?
Actually, I went to almost all the banks. I started with Construction Bank, and if you know Construction Bank, their headquarters is at the Octagon building. Okay. That place houses both Construction Bank and Sovereign Bank, which Sovereign Bank is also an affected bank in this case. From there, I moved to the headquarters of Unibank, the World Trade Center, and I can tell you the situation. Unlike previously, when you see customers rushing in to get their money, this time it's not like that. Because
just calm.
Yes, as at yesterday, the various banks have sent messages to these customers telling them that the bank will not be open for business until 1 p.m. So the situation has been like that. Then I moved to...
I wonder what happened. Were they at 1?
1 p.m. Yes, I was at Construction Bank.
So when this was 1, and then they opened the doors,
yes,
what happened?
You could see few of the customers walking in, walking out.
So you didn't have like plenty people gathered at the gate waiting for the 1 p.m.
Unlike the case of UTN and Capital Bank, no, it wasn't like that. And then also I moved to the now head office of Consolidated Bank Ghana, which is the Sovereign Bank head office, old Sovereign Bank head office. But the situation there was calm, I could say. I mean, there hasn't been any rush for people to transact business or take off their money or any other thing. It's just a normal place. You could see the normal police officers doing their security business, the staff of the bank going in and about doing their business. So the situation has been calm, unlike the previous, times.
But Charles, you went to Unibank, the head office.
Not the head office, but just a branch at Accra.
At Accra. Yeah. It was busier than what we've just heard
Absolutely.
from
It was very busy. We had a little crowd, just at the entrance of the branch of Unibank. But I engaged some of them, and what they're saying is that, hey, I'm coming for my money. I mean, we've heard this time and time again. It started with UT and Capital Bank. Now this, we just don't know what exactly is happening. In terms of the education, they have received notice via text messages. Most of these people do tell me. But the fact is that they're just not trusting the system, as they do tell us. They are just worried about what could happen next.
Suspicion,
and the suspicion and the entire issue related, uncertainty related to the entire thing. But we also visited the Royal Bank as well, a branch here in Accra, but it was very light. Just 2 or 3 customers were just at the entrance just before 1 p.m. So they just entered in and they transact their business. But what I could also add is that all the inscriptions in terms of the withdrawal cards and the slips and everything are still inscribed in the old formats of Unibank and Royal Bank.
Okay, so they haven't rebranded it.
They haven't
physical rebranding
yet,
of it,
sure.
but we've been told. Let me go to Kumasi quickly. Prince Appiah has also been following this for us in the Ashanti region. Prince, what did you find, especially at 1 p.m. when these banks opened?
Yeah, Evans, what I found out was that at these banks, first, I should say that in Kumasi, there's no sovereign construction bank. So it's only the 3 banks here, having branches here. That is the Beige Bank, Royal Bank, and Unibank. And at all these 3 banks, what I realized was that